Hey everyone, my name's Jack, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how I built this workbench. Now, when I told my friend I was going to be building this new workbench, he suggested that I make a video about it. So Davis, this one's for you. To kick things off, I made the base out of 2x4s with a half lap joint in the corner with just some triangular pieces to help support it. Next, I put in the 2x4s that are going to go vertically from the base. On the corners, I had two 2x4s. Don't pay attention to the cat on top of the car. Two 2x4s that were at a right angle just to add more support on the corners. I took some OSB board and cut it to make the floor of the base. This is not really anything that needs to be super smooth or anything. My tools are just going to be the only thing going on top of it. I had to cut each piece individually so that they'd fit with those vertical 2x4s. And I made sure that I had enough room for my table saw. Then added some crossbars of 2x4s, making sure the table saw was fully supported and was going to be level with the rest of the workbench. Then I got a piece of ugly plywood to put on top, make sure I had the right size of everything. Don't worry, that's the pretty plywood that will go on top at the end. But before attaching it, I cut some more OSB board to form the sides of each individual section. Now, the reason I'm building these walls is because I have a plan of putting dust collection kind of in the back of this section so that when I'm using my table saw, it'll go through a pipe that'll lead to my dust collection. Then I threw the not so pretty plywood back on top, cut it down to size, and mapped out where I wanted the T-track to go. Now this was very important so that I don't accidentally hit a screw later when routing through both layers of plywood. With the ugly piece of plywood now attached, now I had to address my old workbench. I didn't build this thing, to be clear, and you can see in this deconstruction just how simple it was, just plywood, 4x4s and 2x4s. Still, though, this thing served me well for the last 2 years. And it had a lot of hardware that I can actually repurpose for this bench. Mainly the wheels, which I attached to where the triangle supports are on the bottom of the bench. And this thing moves really, really easily, which is helpful when I want to be able to work on stuff, say, out in the driveway. Now here's where things get a little bit crazy. I used all of the wood glue that I had over this entire surface of the ugly plywood and put the new plywood on top of it. I had to weigh it down with some 5-gallon buckets full of water, the table saw, and then made some clamp adjustments just to make sure that this entire thing was flat. I did not want a single air pocket inside this workbench. It needed to be completely flat. Then I used the jigsaw that my granddad gave me, thanks by the way, to cut out this space in the nice plywood where the table saw would go, and adjusted that so that it would be the perfect height, perfectly level with the rest of the table. Now I wanted this to have a little bit of a decorative edge, so I got some 1x6 boards and glued those to the sides. Then I used my block plane to make sure that the boards were perfectly level with the plywood. Unfortunately, I did make an error here or there, but hey, that won't be the first error that I make on this workbench, and that's what plastic wood is for filling in the gaps. And with the completed top, it's time to add the T-track. I laid out the T-track right where it's going to go, and then I used a 3/4 bit to cut the grooves into the top of the workbench. And I think it turned out nicely. I was really nervous because one little screw up would have really put a dent in my T-tracks, as it were. But I used just a flat piece of wood as a guide going along the edge of the workbench to make sure that that didn't happen. I finished the rest of the T-track slots and then also made 2 more grooves just for an eventual table saw sled, which I'll build later. Also, special thanks to Heath, my friend who let me borrow his router. I appreciate it. I sanded everything down, and then it was time to finish it with some Odie's oil. This will really bring out the color of the wood, and then, hate to lose, and protect it over time, but it's not going to make it look, a darker brown or haypo or anything like that. And here's the bench when it's fully finished with the oil, and then here's the bench when it's fully finished with the T-track. Now, I know a few people are confused at exactly what T-track is. Essentially, it's a second arm for you. So there's these little accessories that come with it, these little hex bolts that go into the T-track itself. You can clamp them down onto your workpiece and make it so that you can sand or route or, I don't know, carve, do whatever you want to do into it. It essentially makes it so that you've got a stable workpiece and you don't have to work on the edge of the workbench with your piece actually clamped down to it the entire time. And let me tell you, this thing is solid. And with the final touch, this workbench is complete. Now this was a really fun build, but it's actually not even complete yet. There's so many things that I can add to it over the next couple years, whether it's drawers or a router table or the dust collection that I mentioned earlier, you name it. But the thing that's most important, I think, of this table is that it's going to be the centerpiece of my shop, and I'm going to be able to teach my children how to woodwork on it. I want to thank everyone for supporting me in my woodworking passion. I want to thank my granddad, my parents, my friends, my wife, my cats for, of course, always being in the workshop with me when I'm not using heavy machinery. And thank you, whoever's watching this video. This was just a fun thing I decided to do because a friend told me that I should, and I actually had a lot of fun making it. So leave a like if you enjoyed it, and who knows, maybe I'll see you on the next one.